Eala visits Portland before Indian Wells. Filipino tennis star Eala shared photos from Portland, Oregon, as she prepared for her next major challenge at the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells. The 20-year-old was welcomed at Nike's headquarters, where she spent time with staff and supporters before heading to California for the prestigious WTA 1000 event. Building momentum ahead of the Sunshine Swing. Eala has enjoyed a strong start to 2026, with notable performances at the Dubai Championships and other stops on the tour. She now turns her attention to the Sunshine Swing, which includes Indian Wells and Miami, two of the most important tournaments outside the Grand Slams. Historic seeding at Indian Wells. For the first time in her career, Eala enters Indian Wells as a seeded player. Ranked world number 31, she secured a place among the top 32 seeds, earning a first-round bye. It's a defining moment for Philippine sports, reports commented, as Eala became the first Filipino to achieve such a milestone at a WTA 1000 event. Eala's rise continues to inspire fans back home and abroad, with her Portland stop marking both a personal and professional highlight before stepping onto one of tennis's biggest stages. WTA Indian Wells, Eala's projected path. Now ranked number 32, Eala played her last match on the 19th of February when she was defeated by world number 4 Corey Goff 6-0 6-2 in the quarter in Dubai, draw. At present, during this year Eala owns a compiled 10-6 record. Eala's most significant accomplishment of the present season was getting to the semi-final in Auckland. The rain arrived softly in Portland, the kind that didn't announce itself with thunder or drama. It simply drifted down from the gray sky, touching the streets, the trees, and the quiet sidewalks with a patient rhythm. For Eala, stepping out of the airport into that misty afternoon felt like stepping into a pause between chapters of a long season. She had come here before Indian Wells, not for training camps or exhibition matches, but for something simpler, a few quiet days away from the relentless cycle of tournaments. Portland greeted her with damp air that smelled faintly of pine and coffee. The city seemed to breathe slowly. After weeks of travel, locker rooms, and stadium lights, that slow breath felt refreshing. Alex pulled her hood up and wheeled her suitcase toward the rideshare line. A driver named Marcus greeted her with a friendly nod. "First time in Portland?" he asked. "Yeah," she replied with a small smile. "Just visiting before a tournament." "Well," Marcus said as they pulled onto the highway, "you picked a good place to relax. Nothing here moves too fast." Alex leaned back in her seat, watching the blurred shapes of evergreen trees and bridges slide past the window. For once, there were no expectations attached to the day. No practice schedule waiting on her phone. No press interviews. Just a quiet city and a few days of breathing room. Her hotel overlooked the Willamette River, a long ribbon of water reflecting the muted sky. Cargo ships moved slowly along its surface, and cyclists crossed the nearby bridges like steady streams of color. Alex dropped her bags in the room and stepped onto the balcony. The air was cool, colder than what she was used to in Florida or Manila, but it felt clean. She stretched her arms over her head, feeling the familiar tightness in her shoulders, the kind that only professional athletes really noticed. Tennis seasons were relentless. One week you were in Asia, the next in Europe, then suddenly flying across the Pacific for the American swing. Every tournament carried pressure, ranking points, expectations from fans, coaches, and sponsors. Indian Wells was coming soon, one of the biggest stages outside the Grand Slams. But here in Portland, none of that seemed urgent. The next morning she woke early out of habit. Athletes' internal clocks didn't care about vacation days. Instead of heading to a tennis court, Alex walked down the street to a small cafe she had spotted the night before. Inside, the cafe smelled like roasted beans and warm pastries. The walls were covered in local art, abstract paintings, mountain landscapes, and photographs of Oregon forests. She ordered a latte and a blueberry scone. The barista glanced at her tennis bag leaning against the wall. "You play?" he asked casually. "Yeah," Alex said. "College?" She hesitated for a moment. "Something like that." It felt oddly freeing not to explain rankings or tournaments. Just another traveler passing through the city. She sat by the window and watched the rain gather on the glass. For the first time in weeks, she opened a notebook instead of her phone. On the first page she wrote, "Portland, 3 days before Indian Wells." Then she paused. Most people assumed athletes thought only about tactics and training. But Alex had always enjoyed writing down small observations during her travels, moments that had nothing to do with tennis. She wrote about the quiet river, the smell of pine, and the way Portland seemed comfortable with silence. Later that afternoon she walked along the waterfront path. Runners passed by with headphones on. Dogs tugged their owners toward the water. A street musician played guitar under the shelter of a bridge. Alex kept walking until she reached a small park where tall trees arched overhead like a cathedral. She found an empty bench and sat down. Her phone buzzed with a message from her coach. "Practice schedule for Indian Wells coming soon. Be ready for long sessions." She smiled. Of course. There was always another session, another match, another flight. But she wasn't there yet. Instead, she watched the river move slowly past the park. The following day, she decided to explore further. Portland had a reputation for bookstores, and she soon found herself standing inside one that seemed to stretch forever. Shelves rose high toward the ceiling, filled with novels, travel journals, and sports biographies. Alex wandered through the aisles until she found the sports section. There were books about legendary tennis players, stories of championships, rivalries, and moments of pressure that had defined careers. She flipped through one of them. Inside were photographs of packed stadiums, players raising trophies, crowds frozen in celebration. Those images felt familiar. But the quiet bookstore around her reminded her that tennis was only part of life. She bought a small notebook and a novel before leaving. Outside, the rain had stopped. For the first time since arriving, sunlight broke through the clouds. That evening she found a public tennis court in a neighborhood park. The court was empty. She stood at the gate for a moment before walking in. The sound of her shoes against the surface felt instantly familiar. Without a crowd or scoreboard, tennis felt different, simpler. She opened her bag, pulled out a ball, and began hitting serves. The ball struck the racket with that satisfying, clean pop. And again. No pressure. No match. Just rhythm. After a few minutes, a local player wandered over with his racket. "Mind if I hit?" he asked. "Sure," Alex said. They rallied for nearly an hour, trading steady ground strokes as the sun slowly dipped behind the trees. The man never asked about rankings or tournaments. To him, she was just another tennis player enjoying the evening. And that was exactly what she needed.